I call the regular Board of Supervisors meeting for January 22nd, 2018 to order. Angie, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll do the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, give us the faculty of discernment, that is, unprejudiced listening to one another. Let us forgive the hurt that we sometimes cause one another, and give us guidance as we consider divisive issues. Give us the self-awareness and the humility and the strength to do our jobs well. Amen.
Amen.
Are there any requests to change anything on the agenda as presented by the county administrator? Mr. Williams?
Mr. Tucker, I believe I discussed with you earlier about changes to the agenda.
So you're recommending taking 7A off of the agenda and moving it to 9B.
That's correct.
7A now goes to 9B.
Okay.
Is that, basically, that would be the approval, special joint meeting?
Yes.
The minutes.
Okay.
The minutes.
And I'd like to recommend that we change 7D to 9C, Luckstone Road to 9C.
And Mr. Chairman, I would like to, I don't know if now's the time or not, but I would like for us to defer the appointments to the BZA and the Community Action Agency to a later date.
All right, can you give us a specific? 30 days?
Till the next meeting.
30 days?
Next meeting.
Next meeting, okay. And one final change. Item 8B should read 3 appointments rather than 2 appointments. Does anybody object to voting on all of these changes at one time, or should we take them one by one?
I'm fine with them as a package, Mr. Chairman.
Can we make that a motion?
Please.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
May I have a formal approval of the amended agenda, please? Somebody make a motion?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So be it. We're moving on to item 6 on the agenda, public comment period. This is the first of our 2 public comment periods. We are pleased to hear the thoughts of our public on matters and issues that are germane to county business. This is not a forum for criticism of any specific individual or attacks on any individual or any group. It is also not the forum for political campaigning or promoting a business. Please keep your comments focused on the issues and subject matter over which this board has responsibility. Keep your comments to 3 minutes, and please sign up so we have your record, the name of your name in the record accurately. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Lloyd Lenhart. I'm the Community Relations Coordinator for Southside Electric Cooperative. My coverage area includes 6 counties in Central and Southside Virginia: Amelia, Brunswick, Chesterfield, Cumberland, Dinwiddie, Lunenburg, Nottoway, Powhatan, and Prince Edward counties. As part of my job, I've been going around to the area speaking to town councils, Board of Supervisors, Chamber of Commerce meetings, and other groups to introduce myself and tell a little bit about Southside Electric. Started in 1937 in Crewe, Virginia, and headquartered in Crewe with a district office here in Powhatan. Southside Electric provides power to 57,000 homes with some 6,200 active services here in Powhatan. Besides providing electricity, Southside is committed to supporting the community with, we do things through sponsoring and participating in various events like Chamber of Commerce events, sponsoring other events such as the Richmond Symphony coming here to Powhatan High School this weekend, assisting in sponsoring the Festival of the Grape, as well as Christmas parades. Whether it snows or not, that's another factor. This year, we're also sharing with local communities that we have a scholarship available. We have scholarship available to graduating seniors in the area. We also have a youth tour that takes place every year in the summer. 1,500 high school juniors and seniors from across the country, including 8 from the Southside service area, will spend a week in D.C., meeting their representatives, learning about government and the importance of being involved in their communities. I'm currently sharing plans with those with the local high schools in this area as well. I also want to mention, we sponsor another event called A Day in the Life of a Lineman. It's a career exploration program, which brings high school seniors in the service area to one of our district offices to learn about the training, challenges, and benefits of a career as an electrical lineman. In the program's 3 years, some 420 students have participated, including many from Powhatan High School. Michael Payne, one of your teachers here at Powhatan, brings a group there regularly. Again, lots of opportunities there. My name is Lloyd Lenhart. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Feel free to contact me at any time if I can help you with anything or have any questions. Thank you again. Have a nice day.
Any comments or questions? Gentlemen, ladies?
Could you leave a card?
Certainly, I'll do that.
Rep,
And
please.
Angie knows where to find me as well.
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We want to make sure you understand that we really appreciate the linemen out there doing bad weather. I'm amazed of how quickly you brought the electricity back up during this last couple of storms. I'm in a part of the county where Dominion butts Southside, and literally the creek separates them, and I can see the lights not on over there. Thank you for, and
Yes,
thank
sir.
you guys and women who do the line maintenance for us.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy the day. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the board? Mr. Cox, good to have you here tonight.
Thank you. Bill Cox, 1405 Giles Bridge Road. I'm here this evening to talk to you about a secret.
About a what?
A secret.
Oh.
A Powhatan secret. One which needs the light of day. I'm here to talk with you about Shalom Farms. Now, Mr. Melton's sitting there saying, it's no secret to me. I've been there. I've even given a speech there. Mr. Williams has been there, and I know Mrs. Cabell, through her chamber letter, has talked about what they're doing and how they're moving. The secret is about the size and scope of their operation. Now, Shalom moved here this year. It's their first year of operation. They were in Powhatan, they were in Goochland County for a number of years on Rock Castle Road. They needed to expand. They needed better access. Goochland County couldn't provide that, and Mrs. Terry Pruitt did provide that. Gave them a long-term lease for no charge. They spent 2 years moving, and this year was their first year of operation. They have approximately a 10-acre deer fence, 6 acres under cultivation. With that 6 acres this year, they produced over 200,000 pounds of food, fresh vegetables from the sweet soils of Powhatan County that went into the city of Richmond. That's 550,000 meals. It's just a staggering number. But that probably isn't the most impressive thing they've done. They've had 6,900 visitors. Mrs. Cabell, we had the Festival of the Grape, kind of straggled through Shalom Farms all year long. It's a lot of people. So who are these people? They kind of fall into two groups. The first group are people who come out for a little bit of education about farming and to get their hands dirty. That's about 5,500 people. Of that 5,500, approximately 2,000 are from their corporate sponsors. The two largest corporate sponsors are Cap One and Altria. People from all strata in those companies are on their hands and knees in Powhatan County. The second largest group, 1,400, is for faith groups. No surprise there. Shalom is part of the Methodist Church. The next group is about 1,100. 1,100 individuals and families who just want to come out and be a part of their experience and touch the ground. The last 1,000 are from institutions, principally educational institutions, who come to Shalom Farms. I said there was another group just for education. The Blue Sky Fund in the city of Richmond, another nonprofit, brought all of the third graders from 9 elementary schools to Shalom Farms. Wonder where our third graders are. And last but not least, The Science Museum made Farms part of their summer program. So an incredible reach for an organization that's been in Powhatan for a year. But we've got some challenges with them. The first challenge is really created by the post office. Shalom has an address of Midlothian, Virginia. So how do we bring them into our story? How do we make them part of our story? It's a rich story, it's a great story, but we're going to have to work on that. We won't have any resistance from them, but we need to work on that. The last thing I'd like to say is I'd like really to issue a challenge to the 5 supervisors and our county administrator. Take some time this year, at some point, find an affinity group you want. You want to be with Boy Scouts, you can be with Boy Scouts. You want to be with Altria, you can be with Altria. Go out and spend a few hours. Talk to the folks. Find out what they're looking at, what they think, how they feel, so that you can help put this story as part of Powhatan County. Now, I'd be happy to help you with that, but you don't need me. Every time I talk to the executive director, he reminds me of how much Mr. Chardine has done to help them and how much they appreciate his interest. And so, Brett, you don't need another job, but you're in a perfect position because of your wonderful relationship with one of our most important customers to help arrange a better understanding of what's going on at Shalom. So that's all I had to say. Thank you. Appreciate your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Anyone else wish to address the board? Then I close the first public comment period. Moving on to our consent agenda. Anyone wish to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
A second, please.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Moving on, item 8 on our agenda, appointments to the boards and commissions. We've already dropped out 8A and 8C and deferred them to our next meeting. That leaves 8B, where we have 3 appointments or reappointments to the Ag Forest District Advisory Committee. And I'd like to go on record to reappoint David Moyer and Pam Pleasance to the Ag Forest District Advisory Committee.
Max.
I think we have Mr. Timberlake's
do that second.
application in front of us tonight
Oh.
also.
These are reappointments. These are reappointments.
Okay.
These are, don't we have to have one for Bill Cyphers? Isn't his appointment up, his tour up?
It may be.
I think Mr. Cox's was too, and Mr. Walker's was too, but I don't know if staff has heard from them, so we probably,
Well, that's where I was going, Bill. I talked to Mr. Cyphers this morning. He is interested in continuing on the Agricultural Board. He was going to have his wife submit an application. I don't know if that's been received today.
I did talk with her this morning.
Huh?
I did speak with her this morning. She's going
With
to send it
with
with Ms.
Nancy?
Cyphers.
So he's definitely interested.
So will you bring that back next month?
Yes.
Bonnie, will you put that back on the agenda for Mr. Cyphers? And what was the second one?
Mr. Cox, I will speak with tomorrow, and then I guess, you know,
Was Walker one?
and then I'm sure
No,
Larry will
that's a
reach out.
separate one.
Okay.
I think he is on those. I thought he was.
Now, Mr. Cox is up for reappointment too. So we've got 2 reappointments to the Ag Forest District next month. A motion to approve I've already made the motion to approve these 2 reappointments. A second on that, please.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We also have an opening from Owen Walker's resignation, or retirement, I guess we should say. Been a long time that Owen has represented Ag Forests on the district commission. I'd like to recommend Max Timberlake for his reappointment. You have at your desk his application. I think most of you know Mr. Timberlake, who is a farmer in the area and also the president of the Powhatan Farm Bureau. I'll make a motion that we appoint Max Timberlake to take the rest of Owen Walker's appointments.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Moving on to item 9B, the bonded projects update. Mr. County Attorney?
Did we miss?
Thank you,
Sorry,
Mr. Chairman.
sorry, my apology. 8D, a discussion on the county representation on the Richmond RRPDC and on the TPO. You have a handout at your desk of my recommendation of how to handle this. The only changes to the status quo are marked in an asterisk. So they're the only two that we have to vote on, if we choose to vote at all. Any discussion?
So, are you putting that forward as, if you're putting it forward as a motion, the recommendations that we have for us, I think you should announce it and as a proposed recommendation.
So your proposal, Mr. Tucker, would be to leave the RRPDC appointments as they are today, and you're proposing to make a change on the TPO.
That's correct.
Okay.
So we're reconfirming the RRPDC representation, and we're making changes to the
TPO.
TPO. And that's in the form of a motion that we,
Don't you need to announce? to
Yeah,
the
you
public
need to
what the
be more
changes-
specific.
you mean you read the whole thing into the record?
Yes,
No, just the actual
Changes.
changes.
changes, yeah.
Just
The actual
you're
changes
proposing.
are, Mr. Williams goes to the Richmond area TPO, Mr. Melton and Chardine is our alternate. And for the executive committee, Mr. Williams becomes the representative for Powhatan for the RATPO Executive Committee. Is that enough?
That's,
So
It's-
that's a motion. Second.
The,
Discussion?
just a minor correction, the acronym is Richmond Regional Transportation Planning Organization. It's not Richmond Area.
But
Thank you.
RATPO's so much more fun to say.
I know Dan Lisi had fun with it when we changed the name the year I was chairman. He loved it.
Discussion?
Mr. Chair, there might also be, I guess the attorney can advise, I've taken the place of my predecessor just by position, but I don't know that we've confirmed that at the board
it
level.
won't
yet.
hurt to make it included as part of the motion.
So that refers to RRPDC, not to the TPO. So let's move on to TPO first, and then we'll do the RRPDC separate. There's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion about the TPO makeup from Powhatan? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to abstain.
So no opposition and one abstention. And for the RRPDC, for the two positions that Ms. Weiler held, which is RRPDC CRC and RRPDC SIC, Mr. Voorhees would take Pat Weiler's place. That's in the form of a motion.
Second.
All those in discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So be it. Moving on to 9A, bonded
So,
projects.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, that motion actually only addressed Mr. Voorhees. Do we have a change on?
No,
No.
There's no other
the
change,
rest of
okay.
them are all the same. No other changes.
Ms. County Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so on page 49 of your agenda, we have the summary of the bonded projects. I went over these in detail with the finance director on Friday, and at this point, I have no negative issues to report on these projects. They seem to be moving as expected, and we're here to entertain any questions if the board has them.
Any questions about our bonded projects? You said there was no bad news. Is there good news?
Well, I guess the good news would be that things are moving along as expected. Certainly, we had some weather-related delays on the outdoor construction aspects, but indoor construction continued, notably on the school. But none of the delays are substantive. There's a slight extension on the courthouse, but I think, within the scope of reasonableness, I don't think we're going to have any major setbacks on expectations.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
the good news is always there is no bad news.
Yeah.
So we're on schedule and still under budget. That's the bottom line?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Moving on to 9B, which is really 7A. I think, Mr. Williams, you have a concern here?
As that pertains to the school minutes?
Yes.
The joint meeting. My concern for the minutes was that we had discussed in that meeting, I brought up the issue about having a master plan for our offices here in the county, and the fact that we had talked about that in several previous joint meetings with the school board. So I wanted to make sure that that was going to be included, along with the fact that we needed that information so that we could prepare our five-year capital improvement plan accordingly. So I would like to have that included in the minutes.
So are you moving to have the minutes reconfigured to make sure it captures what you just referred to?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Bonnie, have you got that? You got enough of it to run with?
No.
I did not mention the master plan, no. I'll
So-
put that in
No,
tomorrow.
what we have is amended minutes that were brought to the meeting
Correct.
that Bonnie did after being contacted by the chairman after I spoke with him this afternoon. What I'm asking for is the amended minutes to be substituted for what had been proposed originally in our package for the minutes. And in the amended minutes, my statements about the need for a master plan for our buildings, offices here in the county, since we were discussing the adaptive reuse of the middle school, using part of the middle school for the school administration to move over there, meaning that that building would have a vacancy. And I talked about the need to prioritize where we wanted to move people out where we were paying rent, for example. So it was important that we saw the whole plan as it had the systemic effect of moving the school board or school administration over to the middle school. What did that mean to the other offices and buildings where we would be, utilizing and incorporating that change? In addition, Bonnie, I want to make sure that we have in there that we need that information so we can plan for the five-year CIP, the Capital Improvement Program.
Mr. Chairman?
I was going to try to summarize.
I have a suggestion.
David's making a motion, and we have to get it on the record. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a comment on the motion. I would prefer that, since that seems to be, and I do recall that conversation, but it seems like a lot of information. I would propose that we would pull this off and just put it on the, I don't think there's any sense of urgency come in our February meeting so that we all can read it and make sure that it reads properly before we were to vote on it.
I'm fine with that. If
So
you
I would
want, if you want to wait and then have everybody look at it after she's
Well,
gone
then you
back and
know what
revised it,
you-
I don't have any problem with that. Like I said, the important thing for me is to get those two things in the minutes, because we had talked about it, several meetings previous, and I don't want to keep talking about it. I want to put a stake in the ground and make sure we're doing what we've been talking about. That's all.
So we don't need a motion for this, Bonnie. Will you put it on the agenda, the amended minutes? The amendments are to the amended one that you did
So
to
we don't have any minutes that have been adopted tonight because we pulled this off for discussion. Is that
Right.
correct? Okay.
So it'll be on the agenda for the next meeting. Bonnie, if you need more data, call David and get it down specifically. I know he gave you a whole lot of stuff in short.
Or you can just listen to the meeting. I mean, the video's out there.
Moving on to item 9C, which is really 7D, the resolution taking Luckstone into the road system. Question of staff. Brett, it was 2011 that we approved the Luckstone project at Walmart, et cetera. Do we have any idea why it's taken us this long to bring this issue to the table?
In my time here, so the last roughly year and a half, I know they've been waiting for some time for utility quitclaims to get done, so that, again, past year or so, has taken much longer than anybody expected. But the period prior to that, from when you approved the project until this got initiated in 2016, 2017, I don't have the full history on that. Mr. Howland might be able to share some of that. I don't know, otherwise we could look and come back or inform you later on exactly what was transpiring with the road dedication between those time periods.
So, Ed, you don't have any recollection of why it's taken so long?
Originally, Walmart had instigated the road to be built, but I think it never followed through and never got finished.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I've got more questions based on Mr. Howland's response. The road never got finished?
It never got taken into the system.
After Walmart received their rezoning.
Correct.
And the reason?
I can't answer that.
Is it any responsibility on our part to see that it was taken in the system? Because I thought that was a proffered condition.
I'm not sure.
I'm trying to understand, as the chairman asked the question, why has it been 6, 7 years since that rezoning, and only now we're coming forward with having it taken into the state system? And I'm not sure I understand yet. Mr. Chairman, you can help me out if you want to.
Mr.
because-
Voorhees?
Yep. And Supervisor Williams had, great questions that I've asked as well, and I'm not sure that we have good answers, but I do know that the fact that several different parties are involved in these processes with apparently no one party taking full ownership makes it, I guess, gives me some sort of explanation as to how this could have happened. While we are a key stakeholder in the development process, ultimately, these roads are not our responsibility. While VDOT is ultimately responsible for ownership and maintenance of these roads, they're not the key stakeholder or the principal stakeholder in the development process. While the developer is the one who stands to benefit the most from doing land development, in some ways, once they kind of get their property sold, buttoning down all the proffers and doing all the paperwork may not be incented as much as we need it to be if they've already gotten paid for their project or sold it and moved on. So we have sort of a misalignment of ownership, of process, of benefits, and I guess expectations. In order to solve this problem, because this isn't the only one, we've got another set of streets in the South Creek development that also have not been taken in, and we're working diligently to get those on your next agenda. It's very clear to me that we are probably going to be the ones who need to own this process and develop a calendar where we, on a regular basis, go back and check to make sure that these things are getting done, that we put triggers in our processes that prevent certificates of occupancy being issued when proffers aren't done or when roads aren't taken in, and that sort of thing. So we're working on building a better mousetrap for this with respect to road acceptance and management of proffers. I don't have an excuse for this. All I can do is say that this seems to be an area that we need some significant attention, and we need to build some very clear process around that. And we certainly have a willingness to do this. We don't like to report on deficiencies to the board or to the public, because they certainly have an expectation that we're going to make this happen.
Mr. Chairman, one final question.
One final.
Mr. Chardon, I didn't catch everything that you said at the beginning about the period of time from 2011 to, what was it, 2015, 16?
I was saying around 2016, I would say, is when at least I became aware of them working on the process to make the dedication. In that time period, some of the time delays I recall were getting quitclaim deeds from either AT&T or Dominion, possibly both, but that took quite some
That's
time.
when you came
getting-
aboard is when you found out?
Correct, yeah.
I can shed some light on this as well, Mr. Chairman. There was a situation, VDOT had done a quick take on a portion of property. The county had a portion of property, and there was almost a year's worth of luck negotiating. The county, we actually had a resolution back at the end of 2016 releasing our interest. The state had to do some things. It had to be approved by the Attorney General's office, which is a very tedious process. And so I know in my office, we worked on it for many months, working with the AG's office, working with Luck's attorneys to get everybody's right-of-ways aligned and all of the proper deeds and releases taken care of.
So that's, after you came aboard, Mr. Sheridan, that was what was going on, was getting those different claims taken care of as to titles, who owned what?
Correct.
So I think all of us sort of thought that this was already part of the public system. Not your problem, it's all of our problems. And I think it's another example of something that's fallen through the cracks. But I'm satisfied that the county administrator is putting into process a trigger process to improve our performance in these kind of things. So that makes what this motion is, or this resolution is, a cleanup resolution. And therefore, I move that we approve Resolution R 2018-02.
I'll second that motion, but with comment. I have utmost confidence that our county administrator, Mr. Voorhees, will put the processes in place and the procedures in place so we're not, whether this board or any board in the future would have these type of situations come up. Let's correct what happened in the past, but make sure that we don't have those mistakes going forward. So thank you for kind of laying it out that is a deficiency that we need to address. And I guess we'll fix the next one in the next board meeting. So, thank you.
Have you seconded the motion?
I seconded the motion.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So be it. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Moving on to 10, new business. Quarterly financial report as of December 31st.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I feel like it wasn't that long ago we were doing September 30th. The year's gone by very quickly. So before you tonight is the quarterly report as of December 31st, 2017. Try to put a benchmark in there. We should be 50% through the year with our revenues and our expenditures. There are a few revenues, obviously, that are due to the timing of collection may be a different benchmark, and I tried to note those on the side. I did want to make a correction. I had put that the motor vehicle licenses, it was my reasoning of why that percentage was not on target, was that motor vehicle license were to be collected November 5th. Well, that's actually June 5th. It's collected on the first half of our personal property taxes. So I didn't want to throw that off to say we've collected them and we're below on our revenue. As you move on to, when you look at the expenditures, as you have looked through them at a high level, I believe all our departments are on target. Those that are a little bit below are due to one-time expenditures earlier in the year. Like, for instance, my department, we pay for the audit and it's fully paid for. So when you're doing these percentages, it skews it slightly. I'm ready to answer any questions you might have on the quarterly financial report.
Questions for Carla? Charlotte? Questions? Thank you, as usual, for staying on top of this. Is there anything you need to say to us to watch out for?
No, sir, not at this time.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 10B, Resolution R 2018-04. Discussion, Mr. Voorhees?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As residents of Powhatan County will recall, certainly a tragic incident when Special Agent Walter lost his life in the line of duty not that long after I came to the community. And so we've taken several actions over the course of these months as a community to recognize his service and memorialize his memory. This is one of those actions where a portion of Route 13 from the intersection with State Route 1002 Emmanuel Church Road to the Cumberland line would be named, and signage would be installed recognizing that portion of the route as Trooper Michael T. Walter Memorial Highway. This is a requirement of the state process for erecting such monuments, that the local board adopt a resolution supporting this and pledging $2,000 for, up to $2,000 for signage to be installed by VDOT. There is a companion resolution to this effect filed at the General Assembly by Delegate Ware. We recommend approval.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move for approval.
A second?
I'll second that. It's in my district, and I think this is a wonderful, Ms. Walters lives down off of 13 on the left-hand side, and she will drive by this with her children, and it's just a small token, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful thing to do, and I'm definitely in support of it.
I apologize, Mr. Melton. That
That's
is in
okay.
your
No big deal,
district.
David.
The reason I probably got over my skis is I knew Mike,
Yep.
as some
Many
of
of us
y'all
did.
did, so I wish we could do more.
We did with the tax.
I know, but
Any further discussion on this item? There's no public hearing necessary. Do I hear a motion? A motion, I got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So be it. Thank you very much. Moving on, to item 10C, Resolution R 2018-01, establishing a Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission.
Mr. Chairman, our Public
Mr.
Works
Chairman?
Director,
We have a 6:30 time certain that we're supposed to do, but I guess we should do that before this.
Yes, sorry to make you come up. Moving on to item 12, thank you for the catch. Moving on to item 12, a public hearing on 0218-01. The County of Powhatan requests an amendment and reenaction of the zoning ordinance. Mr. Jardine?
Good evening again, board members. So this is a zoning ordinance text amendment initiated by the Planning Commission. Over the past several months or year, you all have seen some cases where either through rezoning or code amendments been able to rectify some issues with porches, covered porches encroaching into front yard setbacks. So Planning Commission wanted to take a look and see, should we put into our ordinance some more flexibility for things like covered porches, stoops, similar to what we already allow for uncovered porches, patios, chimneys, those type things. So they studied this, worked with staff on it, and then ultimately recommended approval unanimously at their December 5th meeting. Staff has received just a few general comments from the public in support of it. Have not heard any concerns at this time for the amendment as proposed. So staff would recommend the board accept the Planning Commission's approval and adopt the amendment.
Questions of staff?
yes, Mr. Chairman. Chardon, wasn't the Planning Commission opposed to reducing the setback on Route 60 from 100 to 75 feet? We had an issue with a gentleman here in the county that had a project and he couldn't go forward because he had what you're bringing forward today wasn't in the subdivision ordinance as a solution.
Correct.
So I remember at our meeting when the majority of the board agreed to go forward with the reduction, that was the only thing in front of us at that time that would give him the relief that he needed to be able to go forward. I recall I cautioned, and some of the other folks said as well, you need to be careful in those types of situations when you're crafting ordinance for one situation, because you don't know what you're doing at that particular moment may have a larger effect. So we were cautious, or I was cautious about voting for it for that reason. Now, what you brought forward addresses what we didn't have in the ordinance before, and it makes sense. I mean, you went to counties like Albemarle, Spotsylvania, Chesterfield. So what you have is kind of a composite of what you saw in those other jurisdictions. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I'm in favor of what staff has brought forward under the condition that we go back to the 100-foot, because it looks like we're solving the problem twice. And that was never the intention, I think, of the Planning Commission. and certainly isn't my intention. So I would like to go back to the 100-foot on Route 60 and at the same time adopt what staff has brought forward, pending anything that my colleagues, can bring forward that, may need some more discussion or refinement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So you want to modify the recommendation specifically to the 100 feet?
Yes, what I would do for Route 60 is to go back to the 100-foot. We had adopted going to 75 feet, is my recollection,
In the agricultural zone section only?
just where we adopted it last time.
Just in the
Yeah.
agricultural section only? But go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, to go back and to undo what we did in that section and go back and revert back to the 100-foot, knowing that what we now have or will be adding to the subdivision ordinance will give us what the gentleman was looking for when he came to us with the problem that we didn't know about.
That you have enough to craft the new motion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment. I don't think we can add something to the 100-foot. Would have to have a public hearing on that. We're going to change something from 100 feet, 75 feet, will we not have to have a public?
Yeah, that would have to be advertised in a public hearing held because it would become a more restrictive change, and so it would need its own public hearing.
So that we proceed with the item on the agenda, 12A, or do we hold off on all of them?
Well, if the consensus of the board is to revisit the 75-foot versus 100-foot issue, my recommendation would be open the public hearing, hold the public hearing, but defer action on this until such time as staff brings you back the suggested amendment, and then you could
Mr.
do.
Williams, you're okay with that?
Yeah.
Any further questions of staff before we have a public hearing? Anyone wishing to speak to this issue, please step forward.
Betty Handy, 3171 Judes Ferry Road. Was here originally when the gentleman who has the front porch problem was expressing his concern, and that time I really don't understand why this was not an ideal situation for him to take it to the Board of Zoning Appeals. I thought that was kind of what it was for, but maybe, Mr. County Attorney, I'm incorrect. But I think we worked very hard on those setbacks, and I would hate to see you, I know perhaps if you're going to discuss it next time, but I would hate to see you on the basis of one person's problem change the setback on anywhere on Route 60 from 75 to, keep it 100 feet. And while I'm up here, will you all talk into your microphones? Because when this thing goes on, it's really hard to hear out here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Handy, for that, particularly the second part.
My name is Woody Cofer, Powhatan. I'm confused. I was thinking you're talking about the guy that wanted to have the front porch built within the 100 feet. Well, that's an agricultural district, and it's not a 75-foot setback. It's a 100-foot setback. So he's increasing, trying to increase into the 100-foot setback and not the 75. You don't have a 75-foot setback in the agricultural district. It's only in the RC or commercial district. That's what got me confused with what you asked.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I wish we could have this dialogue, but unfortunately, I don't think we can. But I would defer to staff to come forward and to be able to explain what we approved last time when we did the reduction and how that was or was not applicable to the gentleman's concern that night about having his porch in the setback, because I'm hearing two different things from Mr. Cofer and what I heard that night. Mr. Jardine, can you help us out?
Yeah, so at that time, several months ago, prior to the board reducing the setback for A10, on that portion of 60, the setback was 100 feet. This gentleman had a home that was built 102 feet or so, I'll say off of that. So the house met the setback, but when he wanted to add a covered porch to it, it was going to encroach something like 3 feet into that 100-foot setback. So that was where he made the request to reduce the setback to allow him to do that, the Planning Commission reviewed it. And Mr. Williams, I'll say you're correct, that the Planning Commission was not in favor of that. That's kind of why they took up this, was they understood what he wanted to do, but they wanted to take a more comprehensive look at it and come up with this. But then subsequently, it was adopted to reduce it from 100 to 75. That was, again, recent, maybe October or September. It's been recent, but today it would be 75 feet, not 100 feet for that section of 60 for the A10 district.
Mr. Chairman, if I may follow up. Since there seems to be some discrepancy between what Mr. Kofor told us with the 20 feet and what you just shared with us with the reduction of 100 feet down to 75, could you, when you come back to us next month with this, can you resolve that discrepancy such that you can explain his position versus your position on that 20-foot versus 100-foot?
Yep, absolutely.
So I'll take that as a motion to defer for 30 days.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, actually, you may want to defer it for 60 because the Planning Commission needs to review it's a zoning ordinance change to go back to the 100, so it needs to go to the Planning Commission first and then come to us.
You have any problem with the 60 days, Mr. Williams?
I understand the protocol, but I also understand the sentiment of the Planning Commission when they did this. So we'll go with protocol, 60
So
days.
we have a motion on the floor for 60 days.
I'll second with comment, please.
Well, and I would ask a motion on the floor for 60-day deferral on this, and then a second motion asking Brett to bring to the Planning Commission a change, to increase that 75 on 60 back up to 100.
So let's move them one by one. The deferral motion is on the floor. I've got a second from Mr. Melton
With a comment.
with a comment.
Just, Mr. Williams has said we voted that evening. It was a 3-2 vote, if I remember correctly, and I was one in support of the reduction. I want it on record, I did not vote to reduce to 75 feet, from 100 to 75 feet for one individual. I did it because I thought it was right. So I want on record, I will never go vote to put change an ordinance for one individual, because as Mr. Williams said, that's very dangerous. So-
Yeah, you did say that. He did say that. It was my sentiment that we were doing it. That was the way my impression was of what we were doing it, but he did say that.
Any other comments on this particular motion? All those in favor of this motion say aye.
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 Opposed? The second motion, would you help us with the wording?
Well, I can do it, I think. The second motion would be to have this referred back to the Planning Commission with a recommendation to go back from the 75-foot to the 100-foot.
Correct. Is there a second to this motion? I'll second it. Discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So be it. Moving on, thank you, gentlemen, lady. Moving on to item 13 on their agenda. This is our second public comment period. The rules and regulations apply that I read earlier tonight. What?
Mr. Chairman, I think you need to go back up in old business. You forgot to do the,
Oh, Ramona, right.
No, I don't want to hear from her.
10C, new business.
10C, Resolution R 2018-01, appointing a Parks and Recreation Commission.
Mr. Tucker, I feel your pain.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, board members, just by way of introduction, this issue was discussed briefly at a workshop at the latter part of last year. Our Public Works Director, Ms. Carter, brought some sample ideas from other jurisdictions, and she went back and worked on the kind of recommended thoughts, and I appreciate her work in putting this together.
Thank you. Ramona, please.
Basically, it follows what we had discussed with 5 appointed members to the commission, but I did add the Public Works Director will be the secretary, and there will be a representative from Parks and Recreation and a representative from the schools appointed by the schools. But the other thing that we had not discussed that I added in here was a teen representative that would be appointed by the schools to sit on the board. And we thought it was a good way to get the youth involved. And because a lot of them are on the front lines, they're involved in these activities, that we thought they could give a different perspective. So that was really the only change from what we had discussed. So I developed some bylaws just to cover the operation of the commission, if it is.
Which start on page 78.
They do.
Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Comments or questions? Do I hear a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make that motion. I've been beating this drum. I'm excited about this. And I'm sorry, I can't find it in my,
Here, I get it.
what's the number? I'd like to make a motion that we approve of Parks and Rec.
R 2018-01.
What he said,
Page 77.
through 77. I'm sorry, page
All right.
1.
Page 77.
So that's a motion on the floor.
Yes.
Is there a second to this motion?
I'll second the motion with comment. I am glad that we're putting this Park and Rec Advisory Commission together. I know in last year's budget, there was some monies that we took out of the budget that were for funding a study. I think this commission can really roll its sleeves up. And I like the changes that Ms. Carter has proposed, especially with the student on there. I think it's smart to have it as a one-year appointment because it could be a senior who graduates and is moving on to their next phase of life. So I like the makeup, and the bylaws look good, so I'm in full support. I'll second the motion.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor of the resolution as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So be it. Moving on now to item 13, our second public comment period. If you wish to address the board on any issue, please come forward, give us your name and address for the record.
Sheriff Nunley. I just want to take an opportunity to commend Ted, Communications Director and staff last night. Y'all are probably not aware, but we had our 911 system go down last night. It was a problem with Verizon. It spread from our county all the way down into North Carolina. And it was particularly important because Powhatan was the county that found the problem. None of the other counties were aware they had a problem. And with the training they've received, they actually assisted a couple of other counties getting online. And some of the counties they contacted didn't realize that they hadn't gotten a 911 call for a couple hours. Not because things were going well, but because phones weren't working. So, but it was commendable. I was out, and y'all know I'll never go home. So I was out last night, and it was very, very commendable the way they handled it. It was a bit of a crisis, and it was a lot of work that was done behind the scenes, got everything back up online, and we actually had to notify, Verizon didn't know they were having a problem. So it was nice that little Powhatan here actually had made a big impact last night. So thank y'all.
Comment.
Sheriff
can you
Nunley,
comment?
would you make sure that all the people who were in the process of finding and correcting and helping our regional partners out understand how much the board appreciates the work that you did? Tom, thank you. Make sure that the people know. Ms. Melton?
I saw that on Facebook. I saw it on the county page, and then others cross-posted it. It had a number to call. So kudos to you and your staff, and thank you, Brad, for bringing it up. But I wasn't aware that we were the only county. I hope that Verizon has put something in place that makes sure that it doesn't happen again, or at least safeguards, or at least alerts people when it takes place.
Would have been nice if they'd have been alerted a little sooner.
Tom, do you want to address us?
I do, sir. I better speak loudly. Yes, ma'am. I want to also congratulate the sheriff's office and the fire as well, because they were out making calls. What we're trying to do is we're trying to see if it's an isolated problem on one of the towers, and the best way to do that is with field operations. So we had fire and sheriff's officers out there, deputies, making phone calls to us to determine if it was a distant issue, because one of the first things Verizon would like to do is say, well, it's a tower isolated issue. Well, no, it's not. And it was an intermittent issue, but nevertheless, one call will go through, another one not go through. So that was one of the points you saw on Facebook. Keep trying, and we're working on it. But we couldn't really transfer the calls to Goochland, although they were unaware, as the sheriff mentioned. They weren't aware until we told them how to test their system. And then when they realized that, and then they figured it out. And then we also helped Cumberland and other places make the ticket order for Verizon to be aware of it. It's more than just an isolated issue.
Make sure that all of your people, Chief, all of your people, Sheriff Nunley, all your people who participated in this understand how appreciative we are.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Then I close this public comment period. County Attorney comments?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
County Administrator comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just 3 items, really. First, I too would like to recognize our public safety team last night for all their work. But I also want to recognize really everybody during these couple weeks of kind of crazy weather. A lot of folks out dealing with snow and ice, and I appreciate, I think the last meeting, board members recognized folks for working on that. We had another round of great weather, and Ramona, thanks to your team, also our public safety folks for making it in and taking care of people. We also had this, what I think is the longest, coldest cold snap that I know of since I lived in Virginia back when I was probably in first grade. So I can't remember a time where it was that cold for that long. I could stand to be corrected, but that you know, 4 degrees below zero, that, I mean, I just don't remember. I just don't remember that. So, but we all survived it, and a lot of the types of things that could have gone wrong, frozen pipes or slip fall accidents and all that sort of stuff got handled very well. And so I'm really proud of that. Folks know what to do when they get it done. So I appreciate it, staff. For the board, y'all have agreed to some meetings to work on the comprehensive plan. You have a supplemental calendar in front of you. Things are evolving, so I want to make note of a couple of changes on it already. We did not strike the meeting that was on the list for tomorrow. That just doesn't need to be on there. The 23rd, we had that on the list that was used to create this, but we all agreed we're not going to meet tomorrow, so you can cross that off. And then on in February, on the 13th, that was scheduled to be the economic development discussion. We wanted to have the chairman of our Economic Development Authority attend. He has informed us that he is not available on the 13th. So we'd like to recommend that we use either the 21st or 22nd which are a couple of open alternate dates, as a solution to that problem, and strike the 13th. So as of today, what I'd like to do is just propose that we strike the 13th, and we will get back to you at your next workshop, which is the 30th. We will let you know which date works best for Chairman Watkins. And then we'll confirm whether the 21st or 22nd is the day we'd like to propose to move forward. Are those clear, board members?
Bonnie, we really appreciate you trying to keep us straight on the calendar, because I know we changed, you've got a lot of different groups of dates running for comp plan, for budgets, for regular, for workshops, and we know the more we change it, the more pain we cause you. But keep us straight, because one of these days, somebody's not going to show up for one of these meetings. Any other comments, Mr.?
And then the last thing is, at the last meeting, I invited board members to take a look at a logo alternate, and had a couple of suggestions on some adjustments. So in front of you, we're passing out the top item is the recommended solution. The next one down is the one with the white lines removed. As you may recall, the white lines were supposed to sort of just stylistically give a nod to our road network. They're not meant to be an exact representation. And the colors, again, are stylistically, graphically depicting the notion that the western half of our county is predominantly undeveloped, open space type, more rural feeling. The eastern section is a little bit more suburban, and the area around the 7-Eleven interchange and east is more of our more densely populated area, the Founder's Bridge area. So that's just a general nod to that. There's nothing more, I don't know, mysterious about this. It was a designer's notion of how to represent the county with a kind of clean, modern look, giving a nod to some of those facts about the community. And then, again, I've given you some other options below that. Our intention is to try to move forward with this. It is always a challenge to design by committee. I did send out a rendering of what the water tower would look like, both water towers would look like with this new logo on it. Where it says human resources on here, that's just a placeholder for whatever department was using this logo for, say, business cards or stationery. The water tower would not have that part on it. It's just the county, would just say Powhatan County with the stylized county logo. And so that's what that would look like. So
So you urging us tonight to make a choice?
I would love to move forward with this. The Economic Development Authority has embraced the concept, and these elements will be on their website. There's some advantage to economies of scale and co-branding to kind of make this where we head, and that would facilitate doing that. But I understand if the board is reluctant to do it. It's certainly your prerogative to give me direction. I'm recommending we go with the top.
So may we have a straw vote on this thing, non-binding? All those in favor of the first one, give me just raise your hand.
I like the first one.
The second one,
I like the second one.
the third one,
No. And I think that one was my idea, it was a bad idea.
the fourth one, the fifth one. We're down to the top two, so it's either the first one or the second one.
How about none of them? I mean, you're going where you're only getting single votes for the top two. So that's not exactly an affirmation of what's been put forward.
So what would you recommend?
Something different. I know that's not helpful. Ted's right, when you're trying to do this by committee, it is difficult, but my issues are the same from last time, so. And I agree with Angie, the others don't do it for me either, so.
So for those of you who have the capability of designing one yourself, or you're interested in trying to take a shot at another one to bring before the board, Mr. Norbick, you're good at this stuff. Ms. Cabell, you're good at it. Larry?
Who actually designed this, Ted?
Pardon me, sir?
Who actually designed this?
As
I
part
mean, you don't
of-
have to tell me a name exactly.
Sure, no, but as part of the contract that the Economic Development Authority put in place with the Riverlink Group to do an assessment of our economic development opportunities, there was a subcontract that worked on our business retention and expansion program. There was another subcontractor that worked on the website, the Economic Development website, and that subcontractor had in their scope of work some branding work, and this is the result of that subcontract.
We're paying up to $98,000, I believe, for that contract, and this does not look like $98,000 worth of value to me. And I showed this around to a few people. I had some unsolicited comments, and it wasn't very popular. So I'm not in the business of graphic design, but the group I chair, RSAC, the Substance Abuse Group, we paid a firm up in Maryland, and they had us branded with modern color palettes, a edgy logo that looks pretty good, a tagline, et cetera, and they had it done in about 2.5 weeks. So I recommend we take another whack at it. That would be me.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just so the record's clear, we didn't spend $98,000 for a logo only, so please, I think it's
No,
important.
for the contract.
Yeah, for the contract. So, you know, again, sometimes we split hairs, and, and we get wrapped up in some things that, the EDA actually worked hard on this. I think they actually voted on several different versions of it, and they came up with their logo. Doesn't have to be our logo, as Mr. Voorhees has said to us. So if we want a different logo, I think what the county administrator is trying to coach us through, it would be nice to have one logo that kind of says the message. And, you know, if we want to go back to the drawing board and do a separate thing, that's fine. But I think we owe it to Ted to make a decision, so.
So, Ms. Cowell, you voted for number 2,
Yes, but
and Mr. Melton, you voted for number 1.
No, I think Mr. Cabell voted for one, I
one,
voted for two.
right,
If I throw my vote for number 2, can we settle this thing?
yes. We can.
Well, a landslide.
So in order to get on with it, Mr. Norvig, thank you very much for your input and your willingness to help. But I'm going to throw my vote for number 2. And so we've got a 3-2. Do we need to take a formal vote, or are y'all comfortable with a consensus? A consensus is, excuse me.
A consensus is not 3-2.
We don't have consensus on this.
You call for the vote.
Call for a vote.
All right.
Call for the vote if you're going to do the
Okay,
3-2.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion, Mr. Tucker, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that we adopt version number 2, which removes the road network from the logo.
A second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
3-2. You got your no logo. Mr. Latchney, would you take us into closed session?
Yes, sir.
Board comments?
No.
I like the way you run a
Board
meeting.
comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I've talked to Mrs. Ann Moore, who's our representative on the J. Sargent Reynolds Community College Board, and she has shared with me she will not be seeking a second 4-year term. She and her husband, Jimmy, they will be traveling as they go through the years ahead. She's very grateful for the opportunity, for the experience of representing Powhatan on this board. She has made a suggestion to me, which I'm going to bring forward for consideration to you guys tonight, and that is to go forward with advertising for the position immediately so that we can have applicants ready to vote on at the end of March at our regular meeting. This will enable her to be able to set up time with whoever we select to accompany her down to J. Sargent Reynolds and give that person an opportunity to meet their future colleagues, to meet staff, persons there at the community college that she'll be working with. She shared with me when she was appointed by this board and she went down there the first time for the first meeting, she said it was somewhat overwhelming. She said she would have appreciated the opportunity to have had some previous contact with the board, with all the various staff down there. So I would like to make that recommendation, Mr. Chairman, that we go ahead and advertise for her replacement so that we can make a decision at the end of March and then work with Ann, whoever we select, to have the exposures that she thinks are appropriate with the folks down there.
Do we need a motion for this? Can we just agree on it?
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
I think that this is a very important appointment in light of Dr. Rhodes' retirement.
Yes.
So it's nice to have potential of a highly qualified candidate with deep experience.
So will staff run forward with what Mr. Williams has outlined for us?
We'll do it.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Williams, for
Chairman.
riding herd on this.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Mr. Latchney?
All right. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of...
Hold on, Pam.
No, it's all right.
We have any other board comments? She didn't. I don't, but I thought somebody else might. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Anybody else have board comments? Mr. Latchney for the third time.
Okay. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Powhatan County desires to discuss in closed meeting the following: consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. And whereas pursuant to Section 2.23711A7 of the Code of Virginia, such discussion may occur in closed meeting. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Powhatan County does hereby authorize discussion of aforesaid matter in closed meeting. Need that as a motion.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We're in closed session.
To the best of your knowledge, that the only matters discussed in the closed meeting were public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting just concluded. Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Nordvig?
Aye.
Mrs. Cabell?
Aye.
Mr. Melton?
Aye.
Mr. Tucker?
Aye. We are adjourned.
Billy, that just popped up.